All right, here we go. Everybody ready? Feet flat on the ground. All right, so question for you guys. Do you guys know which word is universally known in all languages, as far as I understand? Pretty much every language on earth, there's one word or phrase or word that they use in every culture. Any guess what that might be?
No. P? No.
So the one word that they use in every culture is okay. No matter where you go, they use the word okay. And Anne, welcome. Good to see you, Anne. Welcome. Starting.
My first time.
Yes. Good to see you here.
And I can testify, in Chinese we use okay.
All right. Yes, everywhere uses okay for some reason. So the lesson today is it's okay not to be okay. It's okay not to be okay. And the verse I'll read is Proverbs 18:14 says, "The spirit of a man can endure his sickness, but as for broken spirit, who can bear it? The spirit of a man can endure his sickness, but as for a broken spirit, who can bear it?" So that it's basically speaking to the fact that you can endure sickness, but not a broken spirit. So saying that emotional pain, and sometimes it can be more hurtful than physical pain. So emotional pain can be more hurtful than physical pain sometimes. We're on our series of Seeking Wholeness. This is lesson 7, Seeking Wholeness. So seeking wholeness being spiritually healthy, emotionally healthy, and mentally healthy. So that's the goal of this series, that we will walk into that, including myself. So we're looking at the stresses that we deal with currently in life, and then also being healed from emotional wounds from the past. So the results of wholeness are, it can break generational curses, it can allow you to love your neighbor as you love yourself, and give you joy and peace in your life. Some of the traits that we've identified of wholeness, some of the characteristics of wholeness are, once you're whole, you'll have these traits: authenticity, honesty, not seeking external approval or validation, living by values and principles, kindness, you're able to set boundaries, you live with passion and purpose, you have optimism, you have confidence, you have healthy relationships with both genders, so romantic and friendship relationships. You don't lose your control, so when you get angry or something, you're not out of control. You're free from addictions. You address conflict. You're not afraid to address conflict. You're also not afraid to be vulnerable, though. You're vulnerable. You're not judgmental. You're not jealous. So you can genuinely applaud the success of others. You forgive those who've wronged you in the past. You accept that God loves you just how you are. You're not afraid to fail. You're free from irrational fears, worry, and anxiety. And you have selfless encounters with other people. So you're not giving to get, complaining that people didn't show you appreciation for what you did. You're giving selflessly. You're giving selflessly. So those are the traits we've identified as wholeness. And the lessons we've looked at so far we're introducing wholeness, where we kind of defined it. And I talked about kind of my path, journey, which I started through wholeness. And then we went to wounds of the past, looking at brokenness, being healed. Then we looked at how emotional wounds impact relationships. Looked at relationships and unhealthy argument styles. Mindsets that will change your life, where we looked at different mindsets, like growth mindset, abundant mindset, different mindsets and how that impacts your view of the world. Change your focus, change your future, on how what you think literally changes what you perceive in life. Kind of as when you go look for a new car, all of a sudden you realize that make and model of car is everywhere where you didn't notice it before. So you change what you see based on what you're focused on. And then we had how to renew your mind last week. All right, and that brings us up to today. Any thoughts or comments so far? No? Okay. So we'll start off talking about hurt pride generally. So Ephesians 4:29. Who had that?
That's mine.
Okay, that's right.
Ephesians 4:29. Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear.
All right, so no corrupt words or unwholesome words come out of your mouth. There's a saying that says, "Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me." Let's see, is that true?
No.
No. That is.
When I was younger, we had to believe it was true. I think that society sees it differently these days.
You think that what?
So when I was younger,
Mm-hmm.
society kind of made you feel like
society.
it was true, right?
Right.
You need to have a strong backbone,
Right.
and you need to just shake it off, and you need to move on, which, for the most part, yeah, but I think now we're acknowledging feelings a lot more.
Right. That it can hurt you. Yeah. Yeah. So words can definitely hurt you. So the reference book through the series is Wholeness by Torrey Roberts. We haven't actually used it much for this, but today we're going to look at it a little bit. So he mentions that the three most common hurts are being treated in a way that's debasing. So meaning that something that lowers your status, your esteem, your quality, or your character. The second thing is being ridiculed with piercing or diminishing words. And the third is being unseen or unrecognized. So these are kind of things that will hurt your pride. Being treated in a debasing way, being ridiculed with diminishing words, and being unseen or unrecognized. So some example of this could be if, say, someone you're attracted to rejects you, like early on. Someone doesn't return your phone call, or your boss yells at you, or you get publicly embarrassed, or you make comments in a group and they constantly ignore you. So these are examples of that. And so some of the things that cause hurt, it can be what people say can cause a hurt, but then also it can be just the lack of response. The lack of response can cause a hurt too. You send somebody a text and they don't respond back. That can cause hurt just as well. And there's basically three responses we can have in those type of situations. The first response is we can be hurt. We can be emotionally hurt. The second response is we can get angry. And the third response is we can say, "I'm okay." Oh, I'm okay. So you can either get hurt, you can get angry, or you can say, I'm okay. So when you get hurt, you feel it, the pain emotionally. Maybe you'll cry, you get sad. Some people see crying as a sign of weakness. Do you think crying is a sign of weakness? Do you guys think so?
No.
No.
It's a sign of being alive.
Yeah.
When I was a little kid, I used to cry a lot. I was a crybaby in like elementary school. I used to cry a lot whenever something happened. But then I don't know what happened. Somewhere in my life, I became kind of stoic, where I don't express emotions at all. So it may have been a response to being teased for being a crybaby. I'm not exactly sure, but so the first response is you can cry. You can cry, and or not just cry, but you can feel the emotion. You can admit that it hurts. You can feel the emotion, and the benefit of that is that you let it out, and also that you can look deeper into that. The second response you could have to those situations is get angry. So I'll read actually something from the book, because I like the way he expressed this here, Torrey Roberts' book, Wholeness, about anger. He says, anger is where we live when we're running from the reality of hurt. The transition from hurt to anger is how we regain control after experiencing the shock of hurt. Anger takes the power away from the one who wounded us and places the narrative about the hurt within our own sphere of control. Anger pushes every possibility of wrongdoing or inadequacy about the hurt away from ourselves and onto the one whom the hurt came. The one who devalued us is entirely at fault, and we are entirely innocent. The temporary transfer to anger in a long range causes more damage than good, because the anger is contrived. The true primary feeling is hurt, not anger, and hurt will never be healed by anger. So being made whole after hurt requires an authentic encounter to the pain that you are feeling. Burying or denying hurt only creates more dysfunction. Wholeness collaborates only with truth. It does not collaborate with dysfunction we have created. It takes courage and vulnerability to look hurt in the face and allow wholeness not to only reveal the truth, but to lead us into the healing process. So when we get angry, basically, it's a way of, we're taking control of the situation. It's like, yeah, they hurt me, but now I'm in control of the situation now. And, I'm the victim. They wronged me, and now I'm angry, so I can do something about it. It gives you the sense of you're able to do something about it. It lets you're not focusing now on the hurt. Now you have another emotion to express that doesn't feel as bad as the hurt. And the third response is pretending you're okay. So pretending you're okay, it's like, oh, I don't care. Oh, it's not a big deal. It didn't matter anyway. Oh, I'm better off without them. You're pretending you're okay. You stuff the emotion inside, and you stuff the hurt away. And so when you stuff the hurt away, so anger is never really a primary emotion. You get angry because of something. You get angry because you were offended. You get angry because you felt belittled. You get angry because you were embarrassed. So anger is never the primary emotion. Anger is a reaction to some other emotion. So a lot of times if you go into anger, you never really get to experience what it is, the deeper issue. Maybe it was an insecurity that they uncovered, they tapped into. Maybe it was a feeling of worthlessness, a feeling of abandonment, a feeling of not belonging that they tapped into when they hurt you. But now, unless you actually experience the hurt, you won't get to tap into that, and maybe it's a deeper wound, maybe it's a deeper issue. So pretending it's okay is not good. It's okay not to be okay. So it's okay not to be okay. Any thoughts? Has anybody ever pretended to be okay?
Yes.
Yeah, all the time. That's what we do. That's what we do. Especially men, but women as well.
Man's pride.
So now we talk about causes of hurt. Deep hurt. So those are kind of hurts to pride. Then there's deep hurts also. So we've had wounds, hurts, and disappointments that we've experienced in life. Whether that came from a relationship, a disappointment in life, or it could have been a traumatic incident. It could have been an instance of rape or abuse or molestation. It could have been. We've had traumatic instances in life which hurt us, and a lot of times we try to go on pretending that we're okay. When people say, how are you doing? And we'll say, okay. We'll keep, every day we'll repeat the same lie. Oh, I'm okay. And we try to hide the brokenness, try to hide the pain. We've been through something, and we want to go on with normal life, and it's hard to go on with normal life because we all we can think about at that moment is the pain. All we can think about is the hurt, and we try to push it away and continue with normal life, but it's hard to focus on anything else. And we just want to go back to life before the hurt happened. It's like, I just wish life was the same, because now life will never be the same again after this hurt had happened. And so we're emotionally hurt to the point where you can't go back to your normal life. Has anybody experienced that, where you're hurt to the point where it's hard to go back to life before that, or imagine life before that? Yes. Yes. Okay. And there's different causes for hurt. Different causes for hurt. The first cause is that someone hurt you. Someone hurt you. So I think, Angel, you had Proverbs 14:10.
Yes. 1 second. Oops. Yep. Hold on 1 second. It's right here. Each heart knows its own bitterness, and no one can fully share its joy.
So each heart knows its own bitterness. So I've heard it said that it's often not the size of the hurt, but the affection of the offender that determines the size of the bitterness. So it's not the size of the hurt, but the affection of the offender that determines the size of the bitterness. So it's not always necessarily how big the thing they did was, but it's the person who did it that made it so hurtful. It's the deepest hurts will come from a person you love. Cause the deepest hurt. And so an example of that would be if you catch someone cheating in a relationship. Now, so it's one thing if you're with someone and you thought they were a cheater, you're checking their phone, you're looking at their messages, you're following them around, you're suspicious of them cheating, then you catch them, and then it's kind of like, well, my suspicion was right. I mean, it's hard and it's hurtful, but it's a different thing if it's someone you completely trusted, you had no thought that they would cheat, and then they cheat on you. And the reason that is hard is because then you realize that they were living a lie the whole time. So you realize they were living a lie, and that you didn't know them. So it's like, okay, they're a different person than I thought they were. And now you say, well, I thought they were something else, so now my judgment was wrong. So now it makes you question your own judgment, and then now it makes you also question all the things that happened with the past, all the memories you have with them. Those were a lie too. So now you're questioning the past, and then all those plans you have for the future, those are obviously in question now. So it just changes everything. It puts upheaval into your whole life. This is a new person now, and then, like, can I even trust my own judgment now? What about all the other relationships I have? If my judgment is so bad, so it changes your life. And so trust, the thing about trust is, a lot of times when you're starting to get in a relationship, you want to know, okay, well, how did you treat your exes? Or, hey, how does he treat his mother? Or how does she treat her father? Or how did the past relationships are in? And so you want to know, all these. Does my dog like them? Or you want to know all these things, but to find out something about them. But once you get to the point, if you trust the person, then none of that matters anymore. So trust makes a relationship easier because now none of that matters anymore. It simplifies everything. You don't have to worry about everything. You don't have to, none of the history, none of the past matters anymore. If there's trust, then none of the past matters anymore, and there's security for the future. But once the trust is gone, then that changes everything. So that's one. So someone could have hurt you. So that's one example of someone hurting you. So a lot of times we have things we haven't healed from. We're broken. We had things that were done to us by someone else that hurt us. And And those are hard pains to get over. Those are hard pains to get over where, they're stuck in our memory. They're hard to get over. Any thoughts on that? No? Okay. So the other kind of thing that causes pain is your own sin. Your own sin can cause you pain. So who had Proverbs 20:9?
I do.
Okay.
Who can say, I have my heart clean, I am pure from sin?
Right. So who can say that? So none of us can say that. None of us can say I have my heart clean. But so sometimes a sin can lead to hurt. So if we look at the story of David and Bathsheba. David, found Bathsheba, had an affair with her, had her husband killed, and then God told him he was going to kill his son. He was stricken and grieving, but it was a result of his own sin. So some of the pain, some of the hurt that we go through is a result of our own sin. Let's see. And so sometimes they're a result of bad decisions. You have Proverbs 14:9 through 10. I think that was Angel.
Yes. Sorry. Where did we go here? Fools make fun of guilt, but the godly acknowledge it and see reconciliation. Each heart knows its own bitterness, and no one can fully share its joy.
Right.
And no one else can fully share its joy.
Say that again. What was the last part?
Fools make fun of guilt, but the godly acknowledge it and see reconciliation. Each heart knows its own bitterness, and no one else can fully share its joy. Okay.
So sometimes it's bad decisions. So it's sowing and reaping. So sometimes it's sowing and reaping. The hurt that we have experienced is based on a result of our bad decision. I like to use example of a lot of times people will live life as if they throw a bag of rocks in the air, and then 10 seconds later, they get hit in the head with a rock, and they're like, God, why'd you hit me in the head? Why'd you let me get hit in the head with a rock? It's like, well, that's the result of throwing rocks in the air. When you throw rocks in the air, they come down and hit your head. So sometimes it's sowing and reaping. The hurt is caused by sowing and reaping. It's a natural consequence of something we did. It's a natural consequence of a decision we made. So sometimes we hurt we go through. It's just a natural consequence of what we did. And so sometimes it's from action, or sometimes it's from inaction. So if we need maintenance, we got to maintain our cars, we got to maintain relationships, we got to maintain, your finances, your job, so it's from inaction, the decision that we made. And so sometimes we experience hurt because of experiences that we made. Has anybody had that? I want to talk about it.
I like that example, Michael. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay. Let me go to a part I took out since I seem to be ahead of time. Another reason we can experience hurt is because we're believing a lie. We're believing a lie. So we talked about the fact that the loudest voice we hear in our head or in our life is our own voice, the voice in our head. So the biggest lies we can believe are lies about ourselves or lies about God. So sometimes we have willful blindness, refusal to know something that we could know. Refusal to know something we could know. So there's a story of, it was this crack house in a bad neighborhood. It was a crack house, and a rival gang would come, and they would all, oh, we're not scared. They would get their guns and they're ready. They're ready, they're ready for them to come in. They're ready to fight. They're ready to go. And or the police came. The police came to attack them, and they were ready. They're not scared. They had the guns ready. They're pointing the guns out the window. They're ready for the police. But then one time, there was a knock at the door, and all the gang members were like standing still. They're shh, be quiet. They're like shh, nobody move, and they're just standing still, and everybody just was frozen. There was a knock on the door, and they were frozen. They said nobody say anything, and it was the Jehovah's Witnesses. It was the Jehovah's Witnesses there. It's like pretend we're not here. Pretend we're not here. Oh, that was supposed to be funny. But but that's what we do. Okay. But anyway, so sometimes we willful blindness. So we pretend that we don't hear the knocking at the door. So sometimes we're willfully blind. There's knocking at the door, but we pretend we don't hear it. Sometimes we're willfully blind. There's skeletons in the closet, and we just ignore it. Like we rather just ignore it than to actually face it. Or sometimes we don't want to admit there's an error in our plan. We have a plan. We plan to act it out. There's an obvious error in it, but we just won't acknowledge it. Or we're dating. We won't acknowledge the red flags of this person. This person has so many good traits. We're just going to ignore the red flags. We have willful blindness. We're lying to ourselves. Or we have, there's flaws in our political candidate. So we're just going to ignore. We're just going to ignore those. This guy's perfect. This guy's perfect. This girl is perfect. But we're going to ignore all the other flags. So the question is there something about yourself that you refuse to believe? Is there something about, that you're refusing to believe? A lot of times we see that with ideologies. When we have the absolutes, we have simple axioms, and we'll just say, oh, the government is bad, or immigration is bad, or capitalism is bad, or the patriarchy is bad, or this race of people is bad, this race is lazy, or all men are dogs, or working for the man is bad, or just Republicans are bad, Democrats are bad. We just lump everything together, and we have these absolutes, and then we just filter the world through that statement, and we just ignore everything that contradicts it. We ignore everything that contradicts a statement, so we're living lies in some areas, or sometimes we'll have strongholds, things that go against God, we'll ignore the Word of God because we have strongholds, we have ideologies that we're grasping to. They sound good, but they're not complete. Love is the most important thing. That's what Jesus said. Love is the most important thing. He said, yeah, but the first thing he said was love God. So love God is first. And so we're ignoring things so believing a lie is another reason for our hurt. It's like we ignored things until it got too late to ignore it. We ignored things until it was too late to ignore it.
Sorry.
Bless you. All right. So you talked about your own sin, bad decisions. And then another reason we're hurt is you just got broken by life. Just life happens. There's a quote that says, life is so hard that nobody gets out of it alive. Life is so hard, nobody gets out of it alive. Who has Proverbs 15:13?
That'll be me.
Okay, go ahead.
It's a short one. A happy heart makes the face cheerful, but heartache crushes the spirit.
Yes, it's a short one. Quite a few of them. Heartache crushes the spirit. So sometimes life hurts us. Life breaks us. Things just happen. Things happen in life. Maybe it was a financial thing. It just happened. Maybe it was an emotional hurt. Maybe it was relationship. Maybe it was a spiritual hurt. Maybe it was parental. It was something about your health. It wasn't your fault. So it was something that wasn't your fault. You really love your family member, but they got sick. You love your wife, your husband, your mom, your dad. They got sick. It wasn't something you did. It wasn't something they did. It was life. life just happened, or maybe you really loved your kids, but they just turned prodigal. They just went bad. Sometimes life just happens, or you were really good with your finances, and then the stock market crashed because it was a pandemic. It wasn't your fault. It was just, life just happened. So sometimes we get hurt because of things that just happen in life. So that's another source of our hurt, things that happen in life. Has anybody experienced that?
Of course.
Of course. All right.
I think the hurt that you experience sometimes, it actually it helps you, like all of the hurt that I've experienced always like helped me to be a better person.
Mm-hmm.
It always, because of the pressure, because of the disappointment, because of I didn't get my way, it made me better for some reason. Like, I mean, in the sense, like, at the time, it didn't feel that way, right? I was hurt, I was crying, I was depressed, I was everything, but I think about my major hurt. It's part of my testimony,
Yeah.
because my fiance left me, like, it destroyed me. It destroyed me because he was like my God, right? And because of that, that was the reason why I found Jesus. You know what I mean?
Oh,
it was
wow.
that
Okay.
hurt. It was that hurt. It was that pain that led me to Jesus. So, eventually, it turns around for your good.
Right.
Eventually, I feel like.
Yeah, well, it says God can use anything for good. God can use anything for good. And so it was, God can use anything and use it for good. And we've talked about the concept of the wilderness, how when David was told, you're going to be king, you're anointed king. But then before he got to the throne, he's in the desert running, in the wilderness, running for his life, and hiding. But that helped him grow. The Israelites were told, hey, you're going to go to the promised land. But in between, they went to the wilderness for 40 years. They went to the wilderness for 40 years to God had to get rid of a generation, but the Israelites as a people, he needed to change. Or even with Jesus, he said, God said, this is my anointed son of whom I'm well pleased. And then for 40 days, so the Israelites 40 years, Jesus 40 days went into the wilderness to be tempted by Satan. So specifically, he went into the wilderness. It wasn't he was hungry and then Satan decided to tempt him. The Holy Spirit brought him there to tempt him. So sometimes we have to go through the wilderness. So sometimes that's part of the plan. Sometimes it's part of the plan, but it's not always part of the plan. And sometimes we have the other reasons. It was something you did, and it's just a consequence. It is something someone else decided to use their free will and do upon you. So sometimes it could be God's plan. But it also says God will use it for good. So even if it wasn't his plan, he can use it for good. So he can use it for good. And then I heard someone talking today giving an analogy of if you go to a movie and, there's disaster happening and horrible things happening, and then at the end of the movie, everything turns out good. When you leave the movie, you're going to think, oh, well, this thing was kind of good. You kind of go back and rationalize the things that happened, that they were kind of good because, it turned out good. But if you're in a movie and everything is going good, but there's a lot happening, then it never gets wrapped up at the end, even though you're enjoying it the whole time, when you leave the movie upset, so it's kind of like, so sometimes where we are right now and in the movie will influence our memory of the past. If we're in a good place, it's like, oh, yeah, that all worked for good. If we're in a bad place now, it's like the stuff we thought was good before, we don't even really look at it that way. So a lot of times our present state can impact how we view the past. Yeah, so sometimes it could be God's will, but not everything is God's will. And so I'll talk a little about that. God's will. So God's will, this is a little polarizing, my position on it. So I actually disagree with Pastor Brian on the concept. So God's will, so I believe that everything that happens isn't God's will. So some believe everything that happens is God's will. Some believe that everything happened is always God's will. But I think there are things that happen. God gave us free will. So the thing is if there's ever one thing that happened in the past, in your life, in anybody's life, if one thing ever happened that wasn't God's will, then that means everything that happens isn't God's will, by definition. It's like if there's ever one thing in history that happened that wasn't God's will, then that means everything that happened wasn't God's will. So God can use everything, and some people will say God allowed it, which is true, but it doesn't mean that was His will. So some things to help you grow and help change your character. But so for specifics on that, let's see, who has 1 Thessalonians 5:18? Okay.
Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus.
Right. So it says that, hey Rodney, so it says that God's will for you in Christ Jesus is that you give thanks in every circumstance. So no matter the circumstance you're in, you giving thanks is God's will. So if there's ever a time you didn't give thanks, then that means God's will didn't happen. So that would mean God's will doesn't always happen. So if you ever didn't give thanks, that means God's will didn't happen. Does someone have 1 Thessalonians 4:3? Oh,
Yes.
okay. Go ahead.
1 Thessalonians 4:3.
Yes.
Okay. Hold on a second here. It says, for this is the will of God, even your sanctification, that ye should abstain from fornication.
Right. Abstain from fornication, abstain from sexual immorality. It says this is the will of God. So the will of God is that we will abstain from immorality. So if God's will is always done, that means we've always abstained from immorality, sexual immorality. And we all have, right? No. So I'm not a virgin. I've never been married. So that means God's will wasn't always done in my life. So God's will is our job to help God's will be done. It's our job to find out God's will for our life and to do it. Jesus said to pray, "Thy will be done on earth." So that means everything that happened to you bad, it wasn't God. A lot of people want to think that, this is God punishing me. Every time something happens, it's God punishing you. Sometimes it's sowing and reaping. Sometimes it's a result of a bad decision you made. It's not God punishing you. It's a consequence of your decision. And so we look at God as a being in heaven that's just waiting to punish us. But God is letting you run. You're able to go outside of the will. He wants you to. He has all of these things He wants you to do. But if you choose to go outside, there may be consequences. So some of the hurt is not necessarily from God. So every hurtful thing that happened to us wasn't caused by God. They're caused by other people. They're caused by circumstances. They're caused by believing a lie. They're caused by bad decisions. It's not necessarily God causing every hurtful circumstance in your life. So that's one of the things that people believe, that if they believe that everything bad that happened to them, God wanted it to happen, but then yet on the other hand, they're being told, you should love God and God loves you, and it doesn't fit together. It's a dichotomy. So it's like what you're believing, can impact your hurt.
Amen. Hey, Michael, I'm glad you brought this up because, like you said, a lot of people think that when they have troubles and stuff, that's God's fault. But God gave us the gift of free will. And a lot of things that are caused are done by man.
Right. And done by Satan. We have an enemy that's working against us, that wants to kill, steal, and destroy. It's done by man, other people's free will, and then also, James, a lot of places it promises us that we will have trouble in this life. So
Well, this is where our former pastor would say, this is where we are supposed to have discernment. He would say, discern, people, discern. And this is where we are supposed to exercise discernment.
in terms of whether it was God or not?
Well, just in the decisions that we make, we're supposed to, take note, and we're supposed to, think about the choices that we're making. That is discernment.
Right. Yeah, discernment. Yes, yes. And we also want to involve God in the decision. We want to pray on it. We want to involve God in the decisions that we make. Let God guide us. And then also, Pastor Brian will say, there's a whole genre book called wisdom literature. And that's there assuming, you have to make a decision. So sometimes you're not going to get an answer, but there's books, there's Proverbs, there's Ecclesiastics. There's books with wisdom that you're supposed to use when making your decision. It's supposed to help you make your decision. All right. Any other thoughts on that?
I had a few thoughts.
Okay.
And I get with your point by the decisions that we make, we tend to cause the pain from our within. But what actual hurt would God, cause on someone? I don't, other than, unexpected deaths, childbirth, things like that, where it can't be explained, right? But is there, I was trying to think, what hurt would God put on you that you didn't control yourself or by another person?
So, in general, it could be things that would develop your character, change you into something that you need to be to get where He wants you to be.
So almost like the lessons that we learn, right, from our decisions, right?
Right. So, we could learn from stuff that God didn't have, that we caused on ourselves as well. So, I guess it's a case by case, as Station mentioned, for discernment whether an individual thing was caused by God or not. Unless there's, specific wording for it or against it. Okay. So some signs. So these are some signs that you have been hurt and that you aren't healed from your hurt. So there's some hurt that we've been through and that we still aren't healed from it. So one sign that you still aren't healed from your hurt is that you overreact. So people that have been hurt and are wounded, they overreact. So their response is not appropriate for the situation. So something happens and their response is not appropriate. They overreact for that situation. Somebody drops a spoon and they start yelling and cursing at them. It's over response for that situation. And so what it means is they're not just reacting to the situation at hand, they're also reacting to the hurt that they've experienced before. They've acted to things that have prior. So either something triggers, so something may trigger you that actually touches a wound that you already have in you. It reminds you of that ex that used to do this. It reminds you of being little. It reminds you of being embarrassed. And so it touches a nerve in you, and so you overreact. I know, like I grew up in South Central LA, and oftentimes you would hear of someone got beat up or killed even because they stepped on somebody's tennis shoe. You know, you stepped on somebody's tennis shoe. That was a disrespectful thing. You know, so it's an overreaction. An overreaction it wasn't the consequence wasn't merited by the action. So one example of that is road rage. Road rage. How many of you have ever had road rage? Road rage. So the road rage is when your anger gets triggered. You know, maybe somebody merged in front of you, they didn't do it safely, or they didn't signal, or maybe the light changed and they didn't go fast enough, or someone honked at you. Or someone's going too fast too slow in the fast lane, or someone's coming up behind you too fast, or people just have road rage. People get road rage, and it's an irrational response for what happened usually. I remember I had a project at one point, and there was a project manager. He was a larger guy, but he was just like really super nice. He was super patient. He would always help everybody. Everybody would come to him for assistance. He was just real friendly. And his boss was a real jerk. He would yell at people. He would always yell at him and put him down. But he would always, respond humbly and meekly. And he was like a really nice guy. And he would, help everybody. And everybody liked him. And I remember one time we went to lunch. We were going to lunch. And on the way there, somebody did something in traffic. And he's like, hey, what are you doing? And he starts yelling. He's yelling. And it's like, oh, what's going on with Jim? He was like, because he was like just the nice, the quiet, the humble guy. And then on the way back, somebody did something in traffic, and he starts cursing at them and yelling. I mean, they can't hear him, but it's like, what is going on? It was a completely different person. It was a completely different person than what I had known. So road rage can get people out of character, as they say, and so psychologists, some are saying that it's actually a mental disorder called intermittent explosive disorder is the cause of road rage. And they say people with that intermittent explosive disorder, they have behavioral outbursts that are out of proportion to the situation. So it leads to uncontrolled explosive outbursts of behavior, including breaking things, throwing objects, inflicting harm, adult temper tantrums, fighting for no reason, road rage, and domestic abuse. The outburst typically lasts less than 30 minutes. After an outburst, an individual feels a sense of relief, followed by regret and embarrassment. So intermittent explosive disorder. I remember another time there's a lady from our church that was giving me and another guy a ride to the airport. She was giving us a ride to the airport, and she got a little bit of road rage, but then she started telling us the story of how once she was on the road, and this bicyclist he wouldn't, he was doing, I guess she felt he wasn't riding properly, and she honked at him or something. He gave her the finger, and for some reason she started telling us how, she started chasing after him, and she said, yeah, I tried to hit him, and she was like, she tried to, hit him and hit him as hard as she could, knock him off the bike. But she said, God must have held me back because I couldn't get him. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's road rage. That's so sometimes we have defense mechanisms. So have you ever heard somebody say, you don't want to see me when I'm angry? You don't want to see me when I'm angry? So we develop defense mechanisms because we've been hurt. So we develop these mechanisms so we'll never hurt again the way we were hurt. So I don't get hurt again, I get angry. So it's like you don't want to see angry me. Or it's like you don't want to run into jealous me. Or you don't want to run into cheated on me. Or you don't want to run into lied to me. So it's like we develop these defense mechanisms so that we won't get hurt again. So you want to pay attention to what causes irrational responses from you? So what is it that people do that cause you to blow up more than you actually should? Is it feeling rejected? Is it being lied to? Is it being disrespected? If it is, then know that's something you want to look at, because that's something you haven't been healed from. Find out what area it is that makes you blow up, makes you respond irrationally in a defensive response, a defensive mechanism. Then that's an area you haven't been healed from. Now, if it's normal day-to-day interactions that cause you to fly off the handle, then you really need to then you really want to look at it. If it's just normal day-to-day stuff and you're flying off the handle for it, then that's a problem. That's a problem. So we have defensive responses that are more, but then there's also, we have suppressing responses. So we've been hurt before, so instead of developing this alter ego, this angry person, so instead of, we draw back. So we've been hurt, so now maybe we don't want to speak out in public. Now we don't want to feel anything. Now we don't want to speak up, so we've retracted, we withdrew because we've been hurt. We don't want to get hurt again. I don't want to get hurt again, so I'm not going to volunteer for anything. I'm not going to hurt again, so I don't want to try because I might fail. I failed before and that hurt really bad. Now I don't want to try. So we develop these suppressing responses that we don't do things because of the hurt. We don't want to feel that hurt again, so I won't try. I won't try a relationship again. I won't try this again. So we won't try in areas again because we've been hurt. So that's another response to hurt. Another way that hurt looks. And then another way that hurt looks is that if we're judging people. So if we're judging people, so if you're always saying, I hate it when this so-and-so does this, or I hate it when people do this, you might want to ask yourself, is it really something in you that you're judging? I hate it when this person always speaks out of turn, always yells, and it's like, well, is that something that you do, or something that you used to do, or prone to do? Is it something you're really judging in you? So sometimes when we judge other people, it's really something in ourselves that we don't like. It's really something in ourselves that we don't like. But other times we may be judging other people. It's like, oh man, they're just showing out. They're just, they're just doing too much. They're just being so, because we got embarrassed when we did it, so now we don't do anything, so we're judging them because it's a part of us that we disowned, and it's a part of us that we repress now. So now we judge other people that do it. And deep down we really wish we can do it. We really wish we were that free. We really wish we were like that. And so we judge other people for doing it. And a lot of times we see that, Christians in church, we're kind of known for judging other people. Look at this person did that, and so sometimes you're judging people on something you want to do, but you don't do it now because you're a good Christian, so you don't do it anymore. But you're judging other people to do it because you or either you used to do it, and you secretly wish you could still do it. So now you're judging other people that do it. Mm-hmm. That's how we see it in church. I remember I had a girlfriend, and she used to talk real bad about her sister-in-law. She's got 2 kids, and she's still going out clubbing all the time. And I was like, okay, I can see her getting. But then it was like she would just always bring it up and talk about it, going out. And then I realized it was like she really wished that she could go clubbing, but she told herself, I'm too grown for the club or whatever. But she really missed going out, so she would judge her sister-in-law because her sister-in-law had a family. She didn't have a family. She was jealous because she didn't have a family, and she was jealous because she got to go to clubs. Like she didn't get to do either, but her sister-in-law was doing both. So it's like, obviously this is a horrible person. It's like, I don't get to do either of those, and you're doing both. What a reckless mother! What a reckless person that is. So yeah, so we want to look at that. If it's something we're judging other people on, you want to look at see is there something in you that is actually causing that. Let's see, any thoughts? No, no thoughts. Okay, next we'll talk about the fact that God can heal you. So we have these wounds and God can heal us. And so we'll go through a few verses that talks about that. And we're going to continue this next week and also go through some practical things as well. So this week, God can heal you. Who has Psalms 147:3?
I got it.
Okay.
I've got it. Okay. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds.
Okay, God will heal the brokenhearted and bind up their wounds, so we can take it to God. You have Jeremiah 17:14. Who has that?
O Lord, if you heal me, I will be truly healed. If you save me, I will be truly saved. My praises are for you alone.
Okay, so take these verses, Psalms 147:3, Jeremiah 17:14. If the Lord heals you, you'll be really healed. If he saves you, you'll be really saved. Praise the Lord. Matthew 11:28-30.
Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. King James Version.
Amen. All right, thank you. So you can bring your burdens to God, bring your burdens to Jesus. You can pray that he'll heal you. Pray that he'll heal you, and pray that he will expose the areas that need to be healed. So that's kind of, as we're going through this, I'm journeying through this. I'm finding out areas. I found out areas this weekend that I needed to be healed in. So just pray that he'll continue to heal you, continue to show you areas in yourself that need to be healed, and take it to God and take it to God. So God can heal you. God can heal you. And let's see. So before we go to the conclusion, so Angel asked that she could share her story with you guys. She could share her story of some things she'd been through her life. And so I'm going to let Angel share with you guys. And I will let her set it up. Some of the things she's been through in her life and some of the recent things that have happened.
So before I start, I realized that this is my story. I shared it with Michael a while back, and I wanted to share it with you, but I realized after reading it, of course, that it sounds pretty selfish, and it sounds kind of lame in a sense. Because afterwards you think about, of course, the people the real problems that go on in the world, and things that are so much worse for so many other people. So I realized that up front, but at the same time, as you're growing up and going through these things and you have your hurts, you don't always see these things. You're not always aware of these things. And each one of us has our own hurts and our own story. And so I'm going to share it, even if it sounds maybe silly or petty or selfish or whatever, because it is my hurts. And it is my things that God needs that I'm working on healing from. Sorry. And I'm going to read it because otherwise I'll probably get too emotional. Sorry. I may get emotional anyway, and if I do, my apologies. So growing up, I was extremely shy and never popular. I dreamed of one day being a girlfriend, wife, or mom, and eventually a grandmother. At 16, I briefly got to be a girlfriend, but that ended when I wouldn't give up my values or my body, and he turned to someone else and got her pregnant. At about 20, I really liked someone that I was involved in ministry with, who was also a neighbor and one of my best friends. When I finally told him how I felt, after about 2 years of hanging out and doing ministry together, he said, "I have this horrible fear that one day God is going to force me to marry you." That for me was one of the most hurtful brokenness statements that I recall. We still stayed friends, and he ended up marrying a friend of mine, and they asked me to be their maid of honor, which I did. From 27 to 34, approximately, I dated 2 guys, not at the same time, but the guys were non-committal or commitment phobic. Alas, at age 35, I became an almost instant wife after dating for less than 3 months, but to a bipolar man who became verbally, emotionally, and the beginnings of physically abusive. My divorce occurred more than 15 years ago. That, among other things, put my dreams of ever being a mom or grandmother to rest. I guess I still hoped I could eventually, become a wife or a girlfriend in a healthy, godly, committed relationship. Forward 20 plus years later, and that has not happened. At 50, I ended up dating one more person for several years, off and on, who eventually labeled himself as a commitment-phobic man who refuses to label a relationship as having a girlfriend because it sounds juvenile. What he and many men want or are looking for, not all men I'm sure, is just a friends with benefits relationship, which is not on my list of dreams or what I aspire to be. I'm sure that I have a part to play in all of this and lessons to learn, but there's also residual hurt and feelings of sadness that maybe there's something wrong with me. That I can't even be a girlfriend, let alone a wife, mother, or grandmother. The mom/grandmother dreams were let go of and healed long ago, to the best of my knowledge right now. But the girlfriend-wife part still needs some healing. So now I want to share something from this study. Now at 58, this series has helped open my eyes to some of my off-kilter perceptions and mindsets, and that I needed to stop waiting for the possibility of the right man before taking steps to move forward in my life. The result, while I'm still in the ongoing journey of wholeness and healing, I since changed my mindset and just took a huge step and leap of faith and bought my first home. A condo in Sacramento that is now in escrow and, Lord willing, closes in 30 days so that I can move in the day after Thanksgiving. If God blesses me with a future relationship, great. But I don't need him to do so, for he and I to take care of me and whatever he wants me to do for him in the future. And that's my story.
All right, thank you, Angel.
Going through breast cancer and all that kind of stuff too. But
So, Angel, your story is my story. Did you hear that?
I did. Thank you for telling me that.
There's a couple little deviations, but more or less, same story.
Wow.
Yeah, me too. I mean, not to that extent, but me 3, honey. So, and I'm one. I think it's a Silicon Valley issue.
I'm sorry, the men in this group concluded that, if you live in Silicon Valley, you must have been heartbroken at least 3 times.
I think if you lived anywhere, you've been heartbroken at least 3 times, and men and women, I'm sure.
Well, men are silent here, so apparently nobody has been heartbroken.
Oh no, that's not the case. No, I'm just happy to see the camaraderie and I guess the shared story that it's a, I mean, not happy, but the connection that it was a shared experience,
Trusting God for the victory.
In fact, Angel, you probably did something that's been hard for most of us to do, and that's, we can think it, but to actually sit down and put it into words is, that's, you just inspired me to want to take a stab at it.
I think Michael asked a lot of questions previously. No one answered, not because I think it's just too hurtful to go back to the past. And you thought you want to leave the past to the past. You don't want to think about it ever again. You want to forget and move on. But having to talk about it brings back all the memories. So I just don't think people want to talk about it. As the men here are silent, maybe because, like Michael said earlier, it's even harder for men to admit their pain.
Yeah, well, no, Eric is silent because he had microphone issues, but yeah, it's Usually people aren't. Usually it's a lot more talkative group, so I figured that it's a tough lesson. It's okay not to be okay, and I was expecting that.
So Michael, I just wanted to say that what I've learned from life is that if you want to move forward, you have to deal with your past. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people kind of have been through a lot of hurt and don't want to think about it anymore. But what ends up happening is it ends up facing you sometime in your future. So whether you want it to or not. So you gotta really take time to kind of understand why you feel the way you feel or what happened, and deal with it. Deal with it in some way, like talk to the Lord about it, seek counseling from your church official or something, and get therapy. But it has to be dealt with, because if not, it does influence your character, and I think it eventually pops up sometime in the future.
Right, and especially if there's patterns. I mean, if there's patterns, if all men are this or all women are that, if you're seeing the same thing, then it's something that you need to change. But yeah, a lot of times we're heroes talking about the triggers that trigger. If you get mad when you see this, or if you have different reactions that are not normal, or you have problems trusting people, you have problems it's because of something you haven't addressed in the past. I mean, obviously if it's something that's fresh, you want to give some time to let it settle, but we want to address, and it's difficult, or at least be aware that this is the reason why, because sometimes we have behaviors and we're not even realizing that, when this happens, it triggers my fear of abandonment, and that's why I'm blowing up. So I mean, I guess the first step is just to be aware that of the issues that you do have, and then addressing them. I mean, being aware of them is the first part of addressing it, but yeah, addressing it through. I mean, we've been doing some practical steps through here, and we'll do some, but yeah, counseling is also an option and things of that nature. But But in Jesus, though, taking it to Jesus and praying on it in the Word and the verses we have. But
Michael, I had that daily reading too. Did you want me to do that or not?
Oh,
I
yes.
wasn't sure if I
Yeah.
was supposed to.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so the daily reading, after our last session about renewing the mind, on 10:14, my little daily reading thing that popped up said, you are being renewed day by day, so do not be weighed down by yesterday's failures and disappointments. Begin this day anew, seeking to please me and walk in my ways, focusing on today. As you do, I am able to transform you little by little. This is a lifelong process, a journey fraught with problems and pain. It is also a journey full of joy and peace, because I am with you each step of the way. Notice that you are being renewed. This is not something you can do by your effort and willpower alone. My Spirit is in charge of your renewal, and He is alive within you, directing your growth in grace. Do not be discouraged when you encounter problems and pain along your way. These are vital parts of the renewal process. Muster the courage to thank me when you are going through painful experiences. Find hope through trusting that I continually hold you by your right hand, and I am preparing you for glory. And then the verses were, you guide me with your counsel, and afterward you will take me into glory, at Psalm 73:24. Then we do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. 2 Corinthians 4:16.
Amen.
This God is our God forever and ever. He will be our guide even till the end. Psalms 48:14.
Amen. So we're all being renewed. So you're here for a reason. I mean, this is as we go through this, things will come into your life that will test you. Hopefully you'll observe them and try to change. You didn't go into details about you're finding the condo, but I hope you don't mind if I'm not going to go into a lot of specifics, but I hope you don't mind if I mention a little bit.
Go for it. You can share anything you want about it.
Okay.
Before you do, could you repeat those scriptures? 2 Corinthians
4:16.
Yes. 2 Corinthians 4:16. Do you want me to read it again?
No, I just wanted. I was taking notes.
Okay. 2 Corinthians 4:16, Psalm 73:24, and Psalm 48:14.
Yeah. She was in. So she's been living in a house that owned by somebody else, and so she was in a real dysfunctional situation where being accused of stealing things and various things and but not thinking that she could ever get out. But she mentioned it after the one lesson where we had the exercise to every day look at some way you can make something better and do something about it. She decided to just go ahead and look to see at houses, knowing that she couldn't afford it, but to go ahead and look. And she looked and found something and said, well, maybe I could. And there's a property manager friend we know, and talked to her, and she told her, yeah, you can go for it. And as a result of that, that's how she's getting out of the dysfunctional situation, moving in the house because of she decided to do the exercise of doing one thing every day that can make your life better, whether that's picking up a sock or whether that's checking on a real estate listing.
And it's a complete God thing. I mean, it was 2 weeks, literally 2 weeks from the day that I had the crazy idea and sent it to our friend Sandy and said, hey, this is a pipe dream, but she knew my situation, and it just is becoming very toxic for a long time, almost a year now. And so it was 2 weeks from the day that I had the idea to the day that my offer, exactly 2 weeks to the day my offer was accepted and I'm waiting for escrow to close now. It's just astounding to me. I mean, and I've been, of course, been praying through this, and it's like, Lord, I don't want to do anything that's not in your will. If this is your will, this will happen. If this isn't your will, I had a moment of, here's my fleece, Lord. Okay, I've put this offer in. There was another offer as well, and if you say no or wait or whatever, I'm fine with that, and I'll continue being in this situation for as long as I need to. And then when they said the offer was accepted the next day, I was shaking. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was so exciting. But so anyway, I'm now in the process still, and
All right. Amen.
there we go.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. So let's see, any other comments? Okay. So now for the conclusion, scars. So I'm going to read John chapter 20, verses 24 to 29. So this is after Jesus has been hung on the cross and he's resurrected. It's the story of doubting Thomas. It says, But Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples were saying to him, We have seen the Lord. But he said to them, Unless I see his hands, the imprints of the nails, and put my finger in the place of the nails, and put my hand to his side, I will not believe it. After 8 days, his disciples were again inside, and Thomas said to them, Jesus came, the doors having been shut, and stood in the midst of the people. Peace be unto you. Then he said to Thomas, Reach here with your finger, see my hands, and reach here your hand, and put it in my side. And do not be unbelieving, but believing. Thomas answered and said to him, My Lord and my God. Then Jesus said to him, Because you have seen me, have you believed? Blessed are they who did not see me and have believed. So Thomas believed Jesus. Jesus was Jesus because he saw the wounds. A lot of times we've been hurt. A lot of times we've been through things. We've had hurts. We've healed from them, and we've had wounds. And sometimes we get healed. Sometimes we get healed, but we aren't the same exactly as we were before. We're healed, but we have a scar. We have a scar, but the scars don't hurt. We have a memory, but it's not painful anymore. And we're living with the scars. And so there's evidence of the hurt from our past, but it doesn't always go away in our present life. So we've all suffered wounds. We've all suffered hurt. We've all suffered disappointment. So, but Thomas, he only believed that Jesus was Jesus because he had the scars. So if Jesus would have rose and healed his hands and healed his side, then Thomas wouldn't have believed that that was Jesus. So sometimes we have wounds. Sometimes we have wounds in our bodies, and we've had scars and they haven't healed. So when we survive a deadly wound, just like Jesus, lives can change. And you may be altered, but you may have a scar. But the scar is a testimony of God's ability to heal. So you want to be proud of your scars. So you're not going to be perfect. So we're still going to have scars. We're still going to have scars, but the scab will heal if you leave it uncovered. You don't need to cover it up necessarily. You don't need to be perfect. You know, we want to be whole, but we don't have to be perfect. You know, we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to have the perfect house and the picture perfect marriage and the perfect life. And so we can say, oh, it's because of my great faith that I have everything that I have. You know, the scars that we have are the testimony that God healed us. The scars we have are the testimony that you overcame. The scars you have show that, even though I had it bad, God still healed me. And there's some people that are going to be like Thomas. They're going to see the perfect person and the perfect life, and they're going to go, yeah, lucky him, or that's good for him, but I couldn't do it. But there's some people that need to see your scars in order to see the heal. Some people that need to say, well, hey, they were an alcoholic like me, so I can overcome it. Like, hey, they were divorced like me, so I can overcome it. Hey, so we don't want to necessarily cover up our scars. Sometimes we want to show the scars. So there are some people that are only going to be able to be changed, that are only going to be able to believe if they see your scars. So wear your scars as a badge of honor. Let's walk in the way, let's seek the truth and live the life.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome. Any thoughts? Any thoughts?
I just want to say, I used to be so careful about transparency and things like that, but you're right, you have to wear your scars, because I always lead with my testimony, and the testimony is a hard thing. It's a very hard thing. It's very, but when I kept sharing it, it got easier for me to say it and not feel that hard pain that was connected to it. But it makes you like a real person, when you're transparent and you say, yeah, I experienced that hard stuff too, especially with unbelievers, because, they think, oh, you got Jesus, your life is all good and, blessed and all this stuff like that. But when you talk to them and you say, yeah, I had problems, maybe not like yours, but, you're able to connect, and that transparency is the scar. It's the scar. It's what will have them to think, okay, this is a normal person. She's not holier than thou, And yeah, I think that is correct.
Yeah, amen. Yeah, I know growing up, I was like the church boy. I would go to church a lot, and I was quiet and shy. But so I would have friends, and I would want, I wasn't like, people saw me as a good kid. I wasn't really trying to be a good kid. I wasn't a good kid, but people would just assume that I was. I know I would go to, I remember I used to rap, and I'd hang out with a rap group, and we'd go to write with other groups, and they'd be smoking weed, and somebody would try to pass it to me, and one of the guys in the group would say, "Oh no, he doesn't smoke." And I was like, "Wait, I never said I. Why? Who said I didn't smoke?" But people would just have the impression that I was a good guy, and I realized, in teaching this in the Bible study, that a lot of it made people were the impression. I was giving the impression that I was trying to say that I was perfect, or that things like that, and so in this lesson I've been trying to be more vulnerable and expose more, but a lot of people, they won't connect. They won't feel the connection unless they see that you're a real person too. They won't be able to connect with you until they see you. Just like when Angel shared, everyone was like, "Hey, that's my story. Hey, that's my story." It's like an immediate connection because of it.
Yeah, and I think it also like when you said when she opened up, all of us were like, "Hey," and so that's the thing is that's the realness. That's what exposing that scar is what makes us human, and it will also help unbelievers to connect with us.
Yeah.
Too. So, yeah. So.
Yeah, definitely help unbelievers because because unbelievers have the perception that, you're trying to present, Christians are hypocrites and they're trying to present something. So if they see something different than what they expected, they'll listen. It's like, okay, wait a minute, this is not what I was expecting. What is this about? This might be a different Jesus than the one I've heard about. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to, say thank you to Angel for sharing, her experience with us. And, just being vulnerable at the same time with that. I think for me, I did have a very troubled childhood. And my blessings came, very quickly at the age of 18. I didn't think I would be a college graduate and working as a professional right now. But, once I got away from that, that childhood, turning 18, I moved here to the Bay Area, but I carried a lot of that trauma with me and that pain. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it, I didn't want to talk about because I had a lot of shame and I didn't want to expose, really what had happened to me. And so just what I've learned is I had to still, be willing to be honest with myself and share that. So I had to get past that shame of being hurt by someone else or, and so forth. And so it wasn't easy for me to open up until I was ready to at least, speak it out loud for myself and, to put it on paper or to share it with someone else. That took a lot of courage on my part. But the healing process did come when, when I was able to, just be very open about, my childhood trauma, and it took some time, many, many years, for me to get to that point until my adult age. And it's not that I didn't have God in my life. I did a lot of prayer and things like that. But the reality that I was leaving, it was something similar that you said. It was like, on the outside, everyone's like, oh, he was a good person, this and that. But on the inside, I was dealing with a lot. And I think you talked about earlier by saying, you're okay when you're really not, And so that really just kind of summed up my entire life. But, once I was able to talk about it, through counseling and through trusted friends, even through family members, they don't always know what's going on with you either or what things have impacted you. That healing process is really what brought me closer to God and just helped me to understand that even sometimes shame of what you've been through and that hurt, what you is what holds you down, and at least did for me in my case. And once I was able to talk about it, the shame went away because I really came to terms with that hurt is kind of my identity. It's where I came from, it's what it is, and I can't change the past, but I have worked towards changing, the future for myself. So I just appreciate that we were able to talk about these things today. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Keefa, for sharing that. Yeah, the shame is the guilt is you did something bad. The shame is I am something bad, and that's the tough part to get over. It's like you feel a certain way about yourself because of what happened. And it's
So I like to share also, I think for me, my hurt dealt a lot with public humiliation. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny because I at the time when I was going through the relationship, I really thought I was strong. I thought I was tough. I thought I was resilient. And I probably still am. I just have a different perspective now. But when the events unfolded, it just seems like all that toughness I had, inner strength that I had kind of dissipated. And it became very difficult for me to try to recapture that, you know, in the midst of public humiliation, because that's probably the worst thing is, you know, having to deal with people who respect you now hearing things that aren't true, and you're in this position where you have to defend yourself. But with the relation, I've done a lot of soul searching with that relationship and trying to understand, you know, as you said earlier, Michael, you know, looking at what role we play, but not so much looking at the role that I play in a negative sense, but just more or less trying to understand my personality. And one of the things I learned about myself through going through this process is that I probably do have a little bit of a nonchalant attitude that I didn't realize that I had. I thought I was caring, but I do have a little bit of a nonchalant. And maybe that's a little bit of the East Coast toughness, because you're supposed to just, you know, brush it off, shake it off, and move on, and, you know, be tough and keep it moving. And maybe that was a little bit of it, and I didn't realize, like, my sister is Queen Nonchalant. She gets a lot from my mother, and I never thought I had that, but I realized that I did. And so I feel like maybe that played a role, because my mate was looking for me to be a little bit more nurturing and responsive than I was probably capable of being to the level that he required. And so I learned that, you know, when I think I'm doing good, and I sometimes get submerged into work and want that space, I sometimes don't juggle well, you know, cut it and now go tend to this person because they need your attention. And so I think I've had to learn a lot about that, and say, now I think about, you know, how much of my attention does this person want? Do I have that time to give? And so I think about that now more than I in the past, because I think I just kind of had a willful blindness, if you will, as well, in thinking I could just juggle it, they'll understand, or, you know, at least I'm here in the house. You know, I had a lot of willful blind thoughts about, or grandiose, how it could all work together in my head, and it just wasn't, you know, unfolding in that way. But moving forward, I think this series it piqued my attention for sure. I think it's just listening and just, you know, processing. And like we said earlier, I think a lot of us are quiet because we're probably in our own heads, just kind of analyzing ourselves, or just the things that are being said. And I like this portion because it's given us a chance to probably, you know, express some thoughts comfortably around a circle of friends that are trusting, that we probably ordinarily wouldn't have because we're in our own heads. So thank you, Michael, for, you know, creating this, you know, venue for us to speak, and thank you to everyone else for being good listeners and helping us to, you know, become better persons as we move forward.
Amen. Thank you.
And thank you all for your encouragement and support too, through letting me share that with you.
Oh, you opened the floodgates.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing. Otherwise, none of us would be talking.
yes, thank you for being transparent. Thank you.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage to open up like that.
I mean, you know, Angel, you gave us this huge preface that had us, you know, on guard and to be sensitive, and then you had this nice background that put us in a peaceful state. So, yeah, thank you. But that's the one thing I was hoping, Michael, getting back, you know, a lot of times that shame, you know, now you go, how do you look past it in a positive way? Like, for one of the things, like the word that makes me cringe is vulnerable. Because my ex used to say, "You're so vulnerable," and he made it seem like it was a bad thing. But now in sessions like this and in my therapy sessions, it's supposedly a good thing. So I'm always conflicted with the word vulnerable, because I was always told I'm vulnerable, and I never thought I was vulnerable, so I was always fighting against that word.
So did he mean sensitive when he said that?
Oh no, you're vulnerable. Anybody can take advantage of you. You're
I
vulnerable. I'm
see.
like,
Okay. Yeah. That's one of the traits of vulnerability. I mean, you're opening yourself up, and so you can't have genuine relationships unless you're vulnerable. I mean, you're presenting your representative. They got their representative, and they're hanging out, but you don't know that person. That person doesn't know you. You can't have real trust if you're not vulnerable. And that's what I'm learning. I've never been vulnerable. I mean, this is my venture into becoming vulnerable. I mean, I started maybe 6 months before this series and decided to incorporate it.
But it's a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing.
Aren't vulnerable people more confident of themselves? They're so confident in themselves and not just confident, but also comfortable in their own skin. That they are not afraid to be vulnerable, because vulnerable takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, it takes courage. If to be authentic, the goal is to be vulnerable and authentic, in that you're not putting up a front, and that's what I'm striving for. But the payoff for that is that you don't have to worry about what to say. You don't have to worry about other people's reactions. You don't have to worry about controlling emotions. If you're authentic, then you don't have to plan this. You don't have to think about what I'm going to say. It's like once you get to the point where you can be authentic, once you get fully healed and whole, then life is easier, because you just be you, and whatever a person's response is, you're not responsible for that. You're not in your head trying to think about, well, what are they going to say? Well, what if I do this? What is like? If you're authentic, then you're just authentic, and whatever happens, happens. So that's kind of the goal. And and that's so. I mean, I think being vulnerable is a good thing. And I mean, obviously, you want to have boundaries and common sense.
Yeah.
But you do want to be vulnerable if you can. But I mean, with boundaries and and discernment as well. So we have the Holy Spirit with us. We want to use our discernment as well. So you don't necessarily have to spill your life story to the person sitting at the bus stop. But so this is So this is good. So one of the unique things about Unchained Disciples that I like is that it's videotaped, and part of the thought of that is that authentic conversation that is on YouTube, and so people will see Christian authentic conversation. And so one of the drawbacks for that is that being vulnerable. So if anything, sometimes I edit things out that I don't think are appropriate. But if anything that you mentioned today you would like edited out, let me know, because I edit all the videos before I post them. So if anything you would like edited out or not posted on YouTube. I mean, most videos only get 12 views. It's probably us, but but there are a couple that have had, depending on the title, that have had a couple thousand. But if there's something you want edited out, let me know, and I will edit it out.
That's my truth.
Okay.
I'm familiar with it. That's my testimony.
Okay, and they don't see your names or anything. They just hear your voices.